The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. A very good morning to you. To begin the news, here's a look at the lead stories. Almost 90% of Guyanese do not believe that votes at general and regional elections are counted accurately. Opposition leader Joseph Harmon has fired back at Government Minister Charles Ramsen for saying that blacks do not have role models. And in regional news, the opposition parties in St. Kitts and Nevis and the Bahamas at the weekend elected new leaders. 3 former government ministers in Antigua and Barbuda have been freed of corruption charges. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. At least 87% of Guyanese do not believe that votes in general and regional elections are never counted correctly and fairly. This is one of several findings in the Latin American Public Opinion Poll conducted this year. Titled Pulse of Democracy, the report states that there is wide variation across countries of the Americas in terms of beliefs about election integrity. While 75% of Uruguayans believe that votes are always counted correctly, only 18% in Colombia, Guyana, and Jamaica agree. The figures show that 17% believe that votes are always counted correctly, and 65% say sometimes this is done. The Americas Barometer, regarded as the only scientifically rigorous comparative survey that covers 34 nations, is made possible with support from the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and Vanderbilt University. Overall, the figures show that there is a mere 39% trust in elections. The report states that the figure reveals considerable variation across countries, with a 59 percentage point gap between Uruguay with the highest level of trust at 81% and Colombia with the lowest at 22%. The report states that a majority of respondents express trust in elections in only 4 out of 20 countries in the round. Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport Charles Ramsen has come under fire for saying that Afro-Guyanese do not have proper role models. Opposition leader Joseph Harmon has since railed against the minister, saying that this utterance was laced with racial overtones and biased. Appearing at the weekend on 94.1 FM, Mr. Ramsen said the then coalition of a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change had failed the black community and were not role models for wealth creation.
I think that in the black community, young black kids also need lots of examples of success, because they have to be able to see that there's a pathway in order for them to build that successful life. And it bothers me a lot when I hear people who just came out of government, who spent $1.4 trillion in this country and failed the black community, and still are walking around the place saying things as though they were capable of taking the black community, giving the leadership that is needed to help to create wealth in the country and amongst the black community.
But the opposition leader, in condemning Mr. Ramsen's utterances as a lecture that was laced with racial undertones, bias and prejudicial undertones, arguing that the government People's Progressive Party is racist, Mr. Harmon wants Guyanese to press for his removal.
I will not be asking that Ramsen or HJ apologize to the African Guyanese community. Rather, I am calling on the African Guyanese community and all who are appalled by Ramsen's sentiments to unite and push back against those who seek to define the African Guyanese reality within a nanoscopic and inglorious context. I call for us to take action, file petitions, seek Ramsen's resignation or removal from office. Maybe they will ignore it, but let us show our disapproval.
Opposition leader Joseph Harmon. Guyana is about to craft a road safety action plan. The government says this is part of the Adequate Housing and Urban Transport Program being funded by the Inter-American Development Bank. The Department of Public Information says the plan will diagnose and analyze the overall situation, identify key risks, opportunities, and starting points for improvements. The studies will also be used to prepare an action plan of activities and investments to be financed and implemented in order to reduce the number of fatalities over time. The Public Works Ministry says it wants to hire a consultant to draft the Road Safety Action Plan. The consultant is expected to have experience in road traffic safety analysis, particularly relating to engineering, enforcement and investigation, conducting legal services, reviews, and comparative law analysis. The consultant will also be asked to identify legislative and institutional deficiencies and recommend appropriate measures for improvement. The Guyana Police Force is denying that it received political instructions to cut down several palm trees around the Tactical Services Unit's drill square. There have been suggestions in some quarters since the trees were felled last weekend that they were ordered removed because they are the political symbol of the opposition People's National Congress reform. Instead, the police force says that the several decades-old trees have been cut down because they were rotten and posed a risk to life and property. The law enforcement agency categorically states that at no time was any order given to the police force by any government official or politician for the trees to be destroyed. 3 persons have been arrested in connection with the alleged attempt to bribe a policeman with $700,000 after one of them was arrested on 2 sentence warrants. The alleged bribery occurred at the Golden Grove Police Station, East Bank, Demerara. Police say that after the 37-year-old man was apprehended on 2 sentence warrants and taken to the police station, he called his lawyer by telephone. The detained man was, according to police, visited by a 25-year-old woman who gave him a package. The police force is alleging that the man then asked to speak with the investigating officer and give him $700,000 in the presence of another policeman to scrap the investigation and prosecution against him. According to the law enforcement agency, the detainee was told of the offense and cautioned, and the monies have been marked pending charges. The 38-year-old man and the woman were later contacted and told of the offense of conspiracy to engage in a corrupt transaction with an agent. And now in regional news. The new leader of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, SKNLP, is former chairman Dr. Terence Drew. He takes over from long-standing party leader, former Prime Minister Dr. Denzil Douglas. Mr. Drew was named winner in a post on the party's official Facebook page following the party's national conference held at the St. Kitts Marriott yesterday. Drew won with 184 votes out of a total of 412 votes cast. Speaking before the ballots were cast, he said one of his plans is to increase its support base and welcome back those who left, except incumbent Prime Minister Timothy Harris.
I want to welcome all of our comrades who would have left our party for one reason or the other to come back to our party, saving one. I, Dr. Terence Drew, will not sit or negotiate anything with Dr. Timothy Harris. I welcome home everyone else, and he's the only person I will not sit with as a matter of principle.
The new leader of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party is also targeting youth, women and foreigners, many of them nationals of the Dominican Republic.
To our migrant communities, I want to say to them that this party has always been a party of inclusiveness. Y para la gente que habla español, que me dice siempre que nosotros no hablan de ustedes, yo quiero decir que este partido es tu partido también. Y tú vas a tener un líder que pueda hablar directamente con ustedes. I include that Spanish part to let the migrant community know, because many of them reached out to me and said they don't feel sometimes that they are included, and I want them to know that they will be included. They understood what I just said.
This is the first time that the 90-year-old St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party has had an open contest for the position of leader. And across in the Bahamas, the opposition Free National Movement, FNM, at the weekend also elected a new leader. He is Michael Pintard. The FNM lost the recent general elections, and since then, the then party leader Hubert Minnis had found it hard to hold on to the FNM leadership. Newly minted leader Mr. Pintard, shortly after he was announced as the winner, told the party that he was sorry for the mistakes made.
Lest we make the mistake of not listening carefully to the population, we also had some missteps. We made some mistakes. We had some unforced errors. The truth is, sometimes we didn't listen to you the way we ought to. Sometimes we forgot that we are your servants.
That's right.
We work for you.
That's right.
That we have temporary jobs.
That's right.
And so we needed to exercise collectively, no one person, no two person, collectively we needed to demonstrate humility that comes from a servant heart.
Yes.
Some of the decisions we made, while they may have come from a good place, had some unintended consequences of negatively affecting many of you.
He also attributes the FNM's defeat at the recent general elections to harsh COVID measures. The leader of the Bahamas' opposition Free National Movement also promises to work with the government in areas that will benefit residents of the Family Islands. Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Browne is not satisfied with the judgment that freed 3 former government ministers. High Court Judge Colin Williams last week freed Dr. Jackie Quinn, Harold Lovell, and Wilmot Daniel of embezzlement, conversion, and corruption regarding the acquisition of 3 Daewoo buses. The court ruled that the trio had no case to answer. The defendants were accused of using the buses donated to the former administration by South Korea and worth almost $75,000 each for their own personal use. After 8 full days of submitting evidence and hearing arguments from both the defense and prosecution, the judge accepted a no-case application which cited that collectively there was simply not enough evidence to convict the three on those charges. However, Antigua Observer reports that Prime Minister Brown said if he had a say in the matter, he would have challenged the former United Progressive Party ministers on the grounds of misdemeanor in public office, a far lesser charge, but one he believes would have been more likely to stick. Admitting that the charges were flawed to some extent, Mr. Brown notes that the Director of Public Prosecutions will have to decide whether to appeal the High Court decision. Last week, the three defendants expressed vindication at the court ruling. Dr. Quinn says she will sue the government for damages. And now for the latest bulletin of international news, we go to the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The World Health Organization has warned the Omicron variant of the coronavirus poses a very high risk globally and could lead to severe consequences in some regions. It said there were considerable uncertainties about the effect of its mutations. Danny Eberhard reports.
So far, the WHO is unaware of any deaths linked to the Omicron strain. But it's worried nevertheless, fearing it could cause surges in infections which could overwhelm health systems. It could yet be weeks before research pins down exactly how transmissible the Omicron variant is, the severity of disease it can cause, and how effective current vaccines are against it. But the WHO is recommending precautionary action be taken now. This includes enhanced surveillance, ramping up vaccination programs, and basic prevention, the use of face masks, good ventilation, physical distancing, and hygiene. It's also recommending countries adjust their restrictions on international travel.
Japan is the latest country to close its borders because of Omicron. Border restrictions had only begun to ease earlier this month. From Tokyo, Rupert Wingfield-Hayes.
This does not affect Japanese nationals, it does not affect residents, and it doesn't affect people who have multiple entry visas to Japan, but it will affect everybody else. That means foreign businessmen and women, obviously, and students and tourists. Tourists were not going to be allowed in anyway, but so it's essentially business people and students. And it's really bad news for the students because so many students have been waiting to get back into Japan to start there or resume their studies. They were very hopeful they were going to be able to do that this winter. Now it looks like they're going to have to wait again.
South Africa has said travel bans imposed over the Omicron variant have almost no benefits. Officials pointed out the variant was already present in at least 11 countries. And the health minister warned closing borders would only have a negative impact on the situation. He added that South Africa was working with countries that have imposed bans to have the measures revoked. Honduras is on course to have its first female president after the left-wing opposition candidate Xiomara Castro declared victory in elections. With 45% of the votes counted, she had a 20% lead over her main rival, Nasri Asuera. Ms Castro told her supporters she was ready for government.
Let's go for direct democracy. Let's go for participatory democracy. Today I reach out to my opponents because I have no enemies. I will call for a dialogue starting tomorrow with all sectors of Honduran society so that together we can find common points to form the minimum basis for the next government.
This is Moira Alderson with the latest world news from the BBC. Talks on trying to revive the Iran nuclear deal are due to resume today in Vienna for the first time in 5 months. Diplomats from Britain, France, Germany, Russia and China will meet their Iranian counterparts, while US officials will take part indirectly. The Indian Parliament has passed a bill to repeal 3 contentious farm laws that triggered a year of mass protests by farmers. It was cleared in both houses of Parliament without any discussion, despite the opposition's demand. The Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, announced he was scrapping the farm laws this month. The reforms were meant to boost the agricultural sector, but farmers said their livelihoods would be destroyed. The Chinese authorities have recaptured a North Korean man who evaded the police for 40 days after making a dramatic escape from prison. Here's our Asia-Pacific regional editor, Celia Hatton.
Video of the North Korean man first escaping from prison in the northeastern city of Jilin went viral. He scaled a high rooftop, disabled an electric fence and vaulted to freedom, all in less than 40 seconds. The man, known by his Chinese name, Zhu Xianjian, had been serving an 11-year sentence for robbery and illegal entry into China before his escape. After a high-profile police search, he was located more than 90 kilometers away from the prison, sheltering near a scenic fishing spot. Police photos show him looking emaciated and in pain as he was reportedly shot in the leg by officers. Zhu Xianjian only had 2 years left on his sentence. It's widely believed he fled prison so he wouldn't be sent back to North Korea.
Protesters have closed roads across Lebanon to show their anger at the continuing collapse in the economy. Burning tyres blocked a number of main roads in Beirut, Tripoli and other towns and cities. The army has been mobilised to try to clear the roadblocks. That's the latest world news from the BBC.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. Almost 90% of Guyanese do not believe that votes at general and regional elections are counted accurately. Opposition leader Joseph Harman has fired back at Government Minister Charles Ramsen for saying that blacks do not have role models. And in regional news, the opposition parties in St. Kitts and Nevis and the Bahamas at the weekend elected new leaders. 3 former government ministers in Antigua and Barbuda have been freed of corruption charges. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
News Talk Radio Guyana is the station for you, bringing you news updates every hour, major news 3 times a day, edutainment on a higher level, shows like Beat the Clock, Brunch on the Coast, The Afternoon Jam, Youth's Perspective. It's a station that goes wherever you go, streaming online at www.bit.ly/newstalk1031. It's News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM.